Hello, everyone, and welcome to our event. And I'm happy to be here in Utrecht among all of you. My name is Lama Nazi. I'm an advocacy manager in Hamle, and I'm based in Brussels. I'm here with the great Professor Fabio and our great General Director Nadim, but also Ramallah is with us. Also, our colleagues from Ramallah is with us. Ahmad, hello, Ahmad. Hi, marhaba. So we're here today, and we're very proud actually of this event today because we're launching one of our, I would say, like great piece of work from Hamle because we have been working on documenting digital rights for Palestinian people and pro-Palestinian and the solidarity movement, and we've been trying to document, to protect, and to advocate for our rights within the tech and the digital sphere. But of course, one of our main focus is Meta. And Meta for Hamle is a really important corporate that we need to keep working on because as simple as it is, Meta is not only a corporate. Meta is a body that can give the permission from now on who can speak and who cannot speak, who can say their narrative and who cannot say their narrative, to even who can live and who can die. We're speaking about a corporate that can manage and shape a whole country's life. And we're speaking about not only Facebook or Instagram, but Facebook and Instagram nowadays, it's a public square. We can see like it's where everyone speak up. And so we need to make sure that this platform is reserved and it's protected and it's a place where Palestinian can explain and can express their freedom of expression and also can share their narrative, can share their demands, and can document their death. For us, it's very important that to go and understand how this body works and how Hamle actually documented. We didn't document just random incidents. This research has have been working on throughout 5 years of documentation and interacting with different accounts and users. We're speaking about more than 3,520 cases documented throughout these 5 years, where we found there is a systematic erosion of the Palestinian in the digital sphere. That's what we call it. Platformicide. It's not an coincident name. It's deliberate because after all these years, we can see the systematic nature of Meta in the way it's erased and it's trying to remove the Palestinian from the digital sphere. I'm not going to speak more about the research because the research we have the experts with us to speak more about it. So now I'm gonna start with Ahmed. Ahmed Al-Qadi, he's a program manager in Hamle, and he's the one actually created the machine that can document all these trends and Meta, all the violation Meta can occur. But Ahmed now will address with us all the strategy that he pursued and all the information he gathered and the analytical point of view from his work. Ahmed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lama. Hello, everyone. I am Ahmad Qadi, Monitoring and Implementation Manager at Hamle. And before we present the conclusions of our research, I will give you a quick glimpse into the methodology and the tools through which we have collected all that evidence and cases which actually the research actually analyzed. And before I start, we also have online our great friend Fatin Alwan. She's also well-known Palestinian journalist. She has also experienced many of those types of censorship that we are already discussing in the research. She will also give you during this webinar a live experience about how she experienced Meta's platforms throughout the genocide. So I will begin quickly. Can share first slide, please. Okay, so we have actually throughout the years since 2021, we have monitored social media platforms and we have been receiving censorship cases for all social media platforms, and of course, including Meta's platforms that we're discussing today, through a website we called HUR. And this platform is a website where anyone can submit cases of censorship, and we receive those cases and we escalate those cases to social media platforms in order to try to protect and to retrieve or install as much content and accounts or remove restrictions as we can. But beyond the website, we have a whole system of methodology and staff working behind the scenes to monitor, to receive cases, validate them, and share with them with social media platforms. And let's begin. This slide, please. So, first, why monitoring matters in the Palestinian context? Social media in Palestine, maybe now everywhere, social media platforms, technology, generally speaking, has been like the main tool of communication and expression, mobilization around the globe. But in the Palestinian context, because due to the apartheid, the genocide, and the occupation, social media platforms has turned to be, and because due to all of types of repression, Palestinian geographies are fragmented, and because Palestinians cannot contact or movement is very restricted, so social media has turned to be much more important than in many other normal contexts around the world. So social media platforms in Palestine have been key for communication, for business, for mobilization, for sharing news about what's going on in Palestine. And we know now, during the genocide and since 2021, specifically Sheikh Jarrah uprising in May 2021, we now know and have the evidence that without social media platforms, we wouldn't have been able as Palestinians to share updates of what's going on the ground. So social media platforms are very important in this context, and because they are, or even though they are very important, but also social media platforms has been censoring Palestinian content, removing content, photos, posts. Even we are talking here about usual normal photos without violation of any of the policies. So newsworthy content, sharing updates from the ground, those accounts that are sharing those updates that are restricted from time to time, content is removed. In addition to that, there are also specific types of censorship or repression that are not official or direct, like shadow banning, also addressed in the research. This is why we felt that we need to work systematically to collect the evidence for such forms of censorship in Palestine, which we have started under HOR since 2021. And so it's we call it the Palestinian Observatory for Digital Rights Violations, because we monitor all social media platforms, we collect all types of censorship that we receive, and actually since then we have collected until now or received around 15,000 cases across all social media platforms, and also across different forms of censorship and violent content targeting Palestinians through the platform, the website, which you can find directly on Hamle's website. We have these types of forms through which we receive those reports, small submissions from Palestinian or pro-Palestine users, wherever they are when they where their content is removed or they are targeted online. So we can try to help by restoring the content or removing those types of violent content, attacking them, also explicitly leading to censorship one way or another. But on the other hand, we have also, we generate that. So in addition to the support that we provide, we also we use all the data to analyze the patterns, to understand social media policies and how they are enforced, and to collect evidence and to do such a deep and in-depth analysis like this research, which we will use, of course, later on for advocacy. So we use all these data and cases to transform these type of individual cases that we receive into more collection of evidence that we would use for advocacy to change policies. Next slide, please. So simply how the whole like monitoring or documentation works. حملة, so any user can experience, especially if they discuss or post about Palestine, they experience any type of digital rights violations. For example, content removal, account suspension, shadow banning, hate speech, incitement to violence, etc., etc. And the users take screenshots, document what happened with them, and they submit a report through her. The cases are reviewed from our side, and if we need additional information, so we ask also the users for more information. The cases are validated, then we categorize them in a secure database, and we share those cases with the relevant, we escalate them with the relevant social media platforms in order to provide direct support to the users. So this is the first step, and all those cases that later on my colleagues, Professor Fabio, also will be presenting, are based on this methodology. So each of those cases we have received individually, reviewed manually by our staff, and also followed up and escalated to social media platforms. Next slide, please. So in addition to the support that we provide on a daily basis to journalists, media outlets, activists, content creators, we also use the data as like a backbone of our understanding, like an eye. The whole monitoring program is an eye for Hamle on the ground or on social media platforms. Through all these data that we collect, we also can understand the patterns, emerging trends, any changes across social media platforms on how they deal, how they moderate Palestinian content. This is why, for example, we were able to detect that social media platforms are not enforcing, for example, Hebrew content targeting Palestinians, even though Meta, for example, back then said they moderate that content, but admitted later on that our observation was true. And now we also managed to prove that Palestinian content is also over moderated. Before this type of documentation, systematic documentation, I mean, it was easier for social media platforms to try to avoid responsibility for such over moderation, over censorship of Palestinian content, or their permitting of violent content against Palestinians. So with this evidence, now we can approach the whole accountability issue and policy change from like more evidence-based work. Next slide, please. So most importantly, this type of documentation is turned into research reports, and I invite you to visit our website. We have many publications, and now for this research, we have this would be the first of its kind research through which this is the first time we take all those cases that we have received since 2021, and we analyze them to try to understand how Meta moderates Palestinian content. So what I want to say is that this content isn't only, we do not use those cases only technically to provide support, which is very important in our context because no one else can help, but also we take those cases and we transform them into research reports, into analysis, into insights that we can use to in awareness campaigns and advocacy campaigns in our lobbying and advocacy efforts to change policies and to hold those platforms accountable. Next slide, please. So all the data that we have generated through the years are used constantly. We use them in our advocacy with policymakers, with civil society organizations, with social media platforms big tech themselves. So they are not just data stored in our databases and kept there, but we use them continuously, and this research is an example of that use. And definitely the launch of the research itself will be the first step for the work that will follow in order to hold those platforms accountable. So the final goal of this evidence-based approach is to be able to hold those social media platforms accountable, to try to push them for more transparency on how they moderate the content, and we have also inconsistencies in the policy enforcement. We witness this in bias in how those systems moderate also Palestinian and Arabic content. So this is the cornerstone of all this change that we aim for and we have been working on. And so, so maybe like final words. So why this is important? So this is important for Palestine, for our context, but it could be a cornerstone, not only for Palestine, but also for all, I mean, across the world. So the same work can be replicated in other places because, I mean, all civil society organizations around the world are facing and experiencing maybe different forms, but almost the same issues that we are also experiencing here in Palestine regarding accountability and transparency. So this type of work and documentation that reveals the patterns, policies, inconsistencies, and bias can help not only Palestinians or pro-Palestine users around the world, but also any user to those social media platforms across or in every region. Okay. So this is how we work, and we have been recently developing our tools consistently. We still have at the cornerstone of our work is our website, so we will receive cases and use the data for policy change, but also we are adding now new layers. We're using more technology in order to be able to detect broader patterns of censorship that are not or cannot be grasped only with the cases that we receive, but still with all the development and tools that we are using, we still be receiving cases through her because our main goal also is to allow users, activists, journalists also to be active parts of documenting and contributing to the work that we do by submitting cases to HAM. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you very much for walking us through the system HOR. And it's really like I encourage you to go and visit it and see it because it's important even to spread the word among all the solidarity movement, all the students movement to document all these cases. Now we have we're gonna go now to with the professor Dr. Fabio. He's the one was behind leading this research, this report. He's gonna walk us through the data that reveals how Meta governs the Palestinian policies in details. And thank you, Dr. Fabio, for this research. Please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I've been trying to say to Ahmad not to call me Professor Fabio, and just Fabio, and I think I failed. But it's always nice to engage with the idea of becoming a professor one day. So welcome everyone, and thank you very much for being here. It's a real pleasure to actually host Hamle at Utrecht University. I think, let's see, I think I'm on. So just a quick practical note before we start. We had hoped to include a QR code to the report on this slide today, but both teams here in Utrecht and in Ramallah have been working very hard over the past few days to finalize the last adjustment. So the report is around 100 pages and the final typesetting is still being completed. So be a bit patient. The report will be available in the coming days, both on Hamle website, and we'll also make sure to send an email to all of those that registered both here in Utrecht and for online attendance. And the report will be available both in English and in Arabic. Before I begin, I would also like to thank the research team that has worked on this project over the past 3 years. In particular, I want to thank Hamad Kadi for his patience, commitment, and extraordinary work throughout this process with data collection. I also would like to thank the students of the Master in Conflict Studies and Human Rights, both former and current, who contributed to this project. So special thanks to Yusra and Youssef for their work on data analysis over the past 3 years, to Louis and Antonio, who joined more recently and have also made important contributions. This is actually a very cool master. So if you're looking for a master, where to go, please consider it. Very cool, as you can see today. So thank you all so much. This report would not have been possible without you. So I would like to ask you all to join me in an applause to thank our assistants. So I would like to start with the central finding and overarching finding of this report. And the central overarching finding is that meta moderation practices systematically silence Palestinian and pro-Palestinian users, producing what the report conceptualizes as the platformicide of Palestine, the structural and intentional erasure of Palestinian digital presence, visibility, and participation across social media platforms. By referring to this process as platformicide, the research demonstrates that Meta does more than applying exceptional moderation to Palestinians and Palestinian-related content. It involves a broader socio-technical architecture characterized by overbroad policy application, disproportionate enforcement practices, especially against journalists and media outlets, ad hoc policy changes, algorithmic suppression, delayed restorations, and poor or absent communication with affected users and stakeholders, including Hamle. The idea of a platformicide also draws on the extensive work conducted by Hamle until today. So as Hamad was mentioning, please consult that website. It's a very active website with a lot of reports, so please do that. And another important finding is that the platformicide intensified during the genocide in Gaza, precisely at the time when Palestinians needed platforms the most. Very briefly, research design. So we received by Hamle 3,520 cases, which were submitted by users through Hamle platform. For the period from January 2021 to December 2025. This is actually evenly split between Facebook cases and Instagram cases. And actually to trace the specific approach by Meta during the genocide, we actually also sampled the data set for cases before 7 October and after October 7. Our methodological approach is a social media analysis combining quantitative coding with qualitative assessment. And specifically, this pertains to the analysis of screenshots that users submit through the platform. The users report what actually their experience of the moderation, and also meta responses to appeals, both to Hamlet and to the users. Three focuses of our research report here. So first, policy application. So to examine the predominant meta policies governing the enforcement of Palestinian content and assess instances of over-enforcement and relevant changes in these policies. Moderation enforcement, which is basically what Meta does on the content, right? So the policy is governing what content can circulate and which users can be present online. The enforcement is the act of precluding that possibility, to simplify. And we are also interested in the communication aspect, right? So to scrutinize the clarity and informativeness of Meta's communication, particularly regarding the rationale for removal and the specific policies invoked to justify enforcement decisions. In other words, this presentation is going to feature a lot of numbers. But this is not only a quantitative research, right? So we also singled out a number of focus issues. And actually, we selected a number of cases which speak to the experience of Palestinians online. And by doing so, we aim to kind of restore part of the visibility and the lived experience, which is underlying the Platformicide. So showing the stories that aggregate numbers alone cannot fully convey. And we hope that we could have shown thousands of those cases, because behind each of these cases there is a story, but we had to be selective, both in the report and today. As I mentioned, the data set is equally split between cases before and after during the genocide. And also, there is kind of a diversity of users as submitted, right? So we have, and this is user classification through self-identification when they submit. So we have journalists, media outlets, academics, influencers, regular users, journalists, human rights workers, and so on and so forth. So these allow us to actually have a broader understanding of the different usership being confronted by the Platformicide. So to understand Meta's approach during the genocide, we also need to look at what Meta did in terms of policy changes in this period. So in October 2023, Meta announced an expansion of its capacity in Hebrew and Arabic. This is October 2023. And also introduced a lower threshold for automatic algorithmic moderation, which means more errors. In July 2024, Meta revised its treatment of the term Shahid, which I will be discussing later in the presentation, acknowledging its over-enforcement of the term. And in the same month, they also actually introduced a clause for the so-called hateful conduct policy, which is basically moderating the use of the term Zionist when it's used for as an anti-Semitic proxy. Most important, in January 2025, Meta announced a new change of direction in its general policy called More Speech and Fewer Mistakes, a broad restructuring of Meta's moderation system. And this was very much included the removal of third-party fact-checking, so steering away from a multi-stakeholder approach to platform governance in the US. And now we're focused on high-severity violations, so less violations were considered to be high severity, and a more personalized approach to political content. So this is very much reflecting the wider turn, especially in American politics, towards free speech. And so it's interesting to see, for Palestinians on how, on one hand, there are further restrictions, whereas on the other hand, Meta as a platform aligning itself to the Trump administration is actually pushing for more speech, free speech, which is, of course, in itself very problematic. So at the intersection of these two dynamics, Palestine becomes an exception. So there is a more speech framework which allows far-right speech, for instance, on the platforms, quite problematically, so expanding freedoms for that kind of userships, while at the same time, as we will be seeing in this presentation, canceling, erasing Palestine. And so at the intersection of these two dynamics, there is a further censorship for Palestinians. Moving into the policy, into the findings, I want to address the first area of our research, and now it's going to be about the numbers a bit. So Meta, the main finding with regards to policy application is that actually Meta moderates Palestinian users and Palestine-related content through a security lens which criminalizes Palestinian society as a whole. So in our analysis of the cases, most important, we see that Meta's policy application is often ambiguous and lacks transparency. So of the entire data set, only 32% included a specific policy informing the user of the policy that had been violated. Right? So only 32%. And this was even a smaller number, because 32% also includes those cases that we could actually ourselves identify by understanding the context of the moderation, right? So only 32.5%. When it comes to the type of policy that Meta uses for Palestinian users and Palestine-related content, we see that Meta relies heavily on the dangerous organization and individuals policy, also called DOI, when moderating Palestinian content uses. DOI is Meta policy which is used for restricting praise, support, or representation of organizations and individuals associated with terrorism, organized violence, and serious offline harm. So this is a very, let's say, high severe harm policy, right? So among the cases where the policy could be identified, DOI accounts for 57.2% of the entire data set. So making it by far the most frequent applied policy in the data set. This means that a policy designed for terrorism and serious offline harm is being applied to a wide range of Palestinian content and users, including journalists, media outlets, NGOs, activists, and so on. Specifically, Meta fails to recognize the so-called newsworthiness allowance, the idea that you can speak about DOI designated actors for documentation, for reporting. So 71% of the cases by journalists were moderated under DOI, and 59.3% of media outlets. So this is an overview of the DOI and policies applied to journalists. I also have an example of a DOI applied to a journalist. This case concerns a post by journalist Mohammed Gnama from 14 April 2025. This post is relaying an official Hamas statement. So Hamas said, and then brackets, about ceasefire negotiations, prisoners exchange, reconstruction, and lifting the siege on Gaza. The post was clearly framed as a quoted statement, yet Meta moderated it under DOI, issued a warning, and took it down. The post was later restored, confirming the wrongful moderation of journalistic reporting after Hamle appeal. But I think it's important to say that when it comes to restoring journalistic content, that does not repair the harm which was caused in the first place, because the relevance of news is very much related to a specific time. Yeah. Similarly, we see that established media outlets, can we remove the established Palestinian media outlets are regularly moderated under DOI. So this is an example by Ramallah News. The first post is actually mentioning the words of the former president of Iran. And this post was moderated under dangerous organizations and individuals. The second one is a post reporting a demonstration, pro-Palestine demonstration in Yemen. This was also taken down for DOI. In our assessment, none of these cases and many other cases were actually just reporting about news and often quoting DOI actors. Specifically to Ramallah News, we saw in our report, in our data, in the data set, that this was actually particularly targeted with 9 different cases. And 4 of those 9 cases were restored. So this case shows how Meta DOI policy affects established Palestinian media outlets. And there is clear evidence here that Ramallah News was not praising or supporting a designated organization. It was, in fact, only reporting current events. This is not working. Maybe you have to click on the screen again because, yeah. So I mentioned the Shahid issue. So another important focus issue in the report is those cases related to the term Shahid, which actually our analysis shows how the linguistic and cultural blind spot in Meta's moderation. So the term appeared in 17 cases, and 14 of these cases were moderated under DOI. And in all of these cases, the word was used for mourning, remembrance, or to refer to civilians killed by Israeli violence. But Meta treated it as an indicator of dangerous content, leading to takedowns, suspensions, and restriction. So part of the problem with the word Shahid is that related to the translation, right? So Shahid is often flattened into martyr in its English translation. So losing the wider cultural and religious meanings it carries in Arabic and in Palestinian context. So after advocacy by Hamle and others, Meta changed its approach in July 2024, as I mentioned before. So cases involving the word Shahid disappeared after that date, right? So this is an indication that eventually engagement by civil society and stakeholder can work. And this specific case, I think I want to mention it, shows how the term Shahid became a trigger for moderation, even in the context of mourning. This post was simply bidding farewell to Sameh Aktash, a Palestinian man which was killed by Israeli violence near the Hawara village after returning from volunteer work for earthquake relief in Turkey. So we stress that he had no ties to any organization labeled as DOI, and the post was actually removed under DOI. So this case illustrates how, until July 2024, Meta was flattening the understanding of Shahid into DOI enforcement. Also, policy change in July 2024. So Meta announced that it would remove content where Zionism function as a proxy for protected groups, for Jewish communities. And we see a lot of cases in which criticism of Zionism as a political ideology is being conflated with anti-Semitism. I mean, this is not new, right? And this is also interesting from the perspective of what Hamad was saying before, in terms of the asymmetry, right? So post-criticizing Zionism might be moderated, while anti-Palestinian incitement and anti-Muslim incitement and humanization remain insufficiently addressed. We have two cases here, and these are from an Israeli activist whose account was suspended after reposting two Instagram stories criticizing Zionism. One is a video of reporting a small video by Israeli historian Ila Papre, which is discussing equal citizenship, and another one by a Jewish organization, which is actually discussing the idea that Jewish identity is about DNA. Actually, this post is very much about the conflation of Zionism and anti-Semitism, and it's ironic that it was moderated for that very reason. Second area of our findings, moderation enforcement. So the main finding here is that Meta more often used account level penalties than individual post removals. So suspension is the most widely used enforcement mechanism in the dataset. So amounting to 33.7%. So this means that Meta is not only responding to Palestinian content by removing individual posts, but it's targeting the users. The suspension is about the users. And so this matters because a takedown removes one piece of a content, whereas a suspension can silence a user, can take down an entire account. And so especially for activists, journalists, and media outlets, which are actually targeted in 46% by suspension cases, this is particularly harmful, because it prevents them from sharing news. So the harm is not only for the media outlets and the journalists themselves, but it's also for public debate and information. Yeah. Another interesting finding is that with the beginning of the genocide, the type of enforcement became less visible, including shadow banning. Shadow banning, I'm getting back to that. And another type of restriction we saw growing also during the genocide is the restriction on going live. So this is a restriction which prevents a user from going live and reporting live, which is particularly harmful in the context of the genocide, where journalists are not allowed to Gaza. So we see here that suspension is very much targeting journalists, media outlets, and activists. I want to share a story and an example of suspension on journalists. The case of Motaz Azaiza, one of the most visible journalists reporting from Gaza during the genocide, with more than 14 million followers. And Meta applied several enforcement tools at once on this account. It removed some of his content. It suspended his ability to go live, blocked non-followers from accessing his content and account, and reduced algorithmic recommendation, which is basically the account is less visible. So the issue here is obviously that this account is being targeted for being that specific account, for being a journalist. And so it is the combined effect of multiple restrictions which directly limited his ability to report from Gaza at the moment when his reporting was most urgent. And Hamad mentioned shadow banning. We see shadow banning as an issue which is increasing with the beginning of the genocide. So in our data set before October 7, we only had 2 cases. After, we had 56 cases. And as I told you before and after is quite, there is an equal distribution of cases. So this is a major increase. And so it indicates that there is a greater reliance on less visible enforcement. And I think this is an important element of the Platformicide idea, that it happens not only through actual content moderation, but also through the tuning of the visual infrastructure of the platform, right? An example is, for instance, the fact that I think it was the 2023 update, if I'm not wrong, a political content filter was applied automatically to all users on Meta, right? So there will be less political content shown to you by default, right? So all of these kind of instruments are used to actually implement the Platformicide of Palestine, and they're not necessarily part of the traditional repertoire of content moderation. Okay, so another one that I mentioned very briefly, we had 235 cases involving the restriction on live broadcasting, targeting particularly activists, journalists. And here we see that actually Meta had a high level of restoration. So after appeal by Hamle, Meta would recognize that this was a wrongful moderation and they would lift the restriction. But this is a very problematic way of doing it, right? Because restricting an account from going live and restoring that possibility is a type of moderation which is actually also working on the future, on the user, right? Especially when time is of essence, right? So live broadcasting is crucial for reporting and mobilization, as I was mentioning before. Some examples of restriction from going live, and I have to rush a bit. So in one case here, in one case, an account was banned from going live for 90 days because it was sharing a news from the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. And in another, an account was banned for going live for 7 days after sharing documentation of injured Palestinian children. These restrictions matter because live broadcasting is also relevant for questions of accountability, for creating evidence. Another interesting case, which I think was one of the first ones we found, right? One of the first patterns we found, which might be perhaps the most, I think, emblematic. We saw in many cases that content was taken down just for including the Palestinian flag. And there is no policy that says that the Palestinian flag is against Meta policies. So in the report, we see the Palestinian flag as a focus issue in content takedown cases, showing that even symbolic Palestinian expression can become vulnerable to moderation. And so here, this question of the symbolic and cultural is also speaking to the idea of the Platformicide. And these examples show different ways in which the Palestinian flag became vulnerable. In the first case there, this is students celebrating their graduation, having flags, and was taken down. Here is someone having the Palestinian flag in their bio, and it was taken down. Here it's someone having the Palestinian flag in the user picture. It might be the opposite, but that's not important. And here a content was taken down by only having the emoji, the Palestinian flag emoji. And I want to read the caption which was posted together by the original poster in the content that was taken down for Palestinian women celebrating their graduation with the Palestinian flag. We do not applaud ourselves while our people suffer. We ensure the world knows what Palestine is and what we are fighting for every chance we get. So Instagram took the post down under DOI as a dangerous organization, even though we know that this is an obvious case of wrongful moderation, right? There is no policy indicating that the Palestinian flag is not allowed. Third area of our analysis, communication. So Hamad was mentioning how this works, right? Users submit cases to Hamle. Hamle decides whether to appeal or not with Meta. And in 48% of appeals, Meta did not respond to Hamle. And this is even more worrying considering that Hamle is a stakeholder which is part of Meta's Trusted Partner Program. So 48% did not receive a response. We mentioned before that in most cases, Meta does not provide a justification of the policy applied to users. But appeals work eventually. So 926 cases, I never read so many numbers in my life in a short time, were restored after escalation, right? However, even if they were restored, Meta did not provide a justification for why they were taken down, moderated in the first place. So leaving actually users without knowing what had happened. Another interesting finding is that Meta often says that accounts are active and unrestricted, and instead they are not, right? So users keep reporting about their account not being unrestricted. Yes, and during the genocide, we saw a sharp increase in the number of recognized moderations error by Meta. So, which I think is, where is it? Yes. So whereas before the beginning of the genocide, Meta acknowledged that had incorrectly removed 14 pieces of content, after we see that this is 248, right? So from 0.8 to 23%. This is an important increase. It shows on one end that actually there was more staffing by Meta during this period, but it also shows that what we said before, moderation during the genocide became more indiscriminate and more inaccurate. So on the basis of all these numbers, we also came up with a number of policy recommendations in connection with Hamle, in discussion with Hamle. So we recommend that Meta must conduct a heightened human rights due diligence of its content moderation practices in Israel and Palestine, undertake an independent, transparent and public audit of its human rights due diligence procedures, overhaul the DOI policy to include proportionality safeguards, especially for journalists, strengthen and operationalize the newsworthiness protections, and improve the quality and timeliness of communication. And I think Nadim will be saying more about this. Last, if possible.
Of course.
It's, of course, the main focus of this report was actually to place these findings within Meta's own rules, policies, and architecture. But we also understand that there is a need for placing these findings within broader accountability frameworks. So it's important that Meta is made accountable for this, right? So there is a need to examine Meta responsibilities under the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, assess Meta practices against the International Freedom of Expression Standard, and also to examine the implication of content moderation with regards to accountability processes. So how important it is to have this content for those processes. And concluding.
And we have more questions, Doctor, so we can even
yes.
speak.
So concluding, I think it's also important to keep Meta accountable. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Doctor, for this presentation and all these details. I know these numbers feel a little bit of an abstract. It's not an abstract. We have with us Faten Alwan. Faten Alwan is one of the most prominent Palestinian journalists in the West, but currently she left to Europe because of so many threats. Faten, she will tell us on the other side of these numbers and these decisions, what happened to her and how she lived it. It's going to make it easier to you because it's her living experience as a famous journalist and being suppressed and silenced on Meta. Hi, Faten.
Hi, Lama. How are you guys? Can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Can you?
Oh, yeah, totally.
We're happy to have you, and the floor is yours.
How do I start? I've been banned on going live for 2 years and something right now. Hamle managed to get my account back 8, 9, 10 times. I don't even remember, because you sleep, you wake up, you find your account, vanished, gone, disappeared. I'm a journalist and I work on the ground mainly as a journalist. A journalist does not give opinion. They take the news from the ground, put it in front of your eyes. My account is almost 500,000 followers. My views are, in good luck days, 7,000, 8,000 views and maybe 9 comments or something like this. So I am on Instagram, but I'm not. I'm nothing but a shadow. And that's the definition of a shadow ban. I cannot go live. I cannot monetize. I cannot share. My friends cannot send me messages. Only people that go technically into my page can see what I have. And sometimes I feel like Meta in the beginning was the weapon that the Palestinian used to expose the story, especially for the new generation, that in an era of AI, high speed and everything, no one is going to sit on the silver screen and watch the news. And we need to deliver the news to the number of people as much as we can. And Meta was our tool that helped us for the first time to cross that line of, editorial line, what you can say, what you cannot say. And then suddenly she turned into the monster that became exactly when we used to go to school. You have the headmaster, and the headmaster will decide whether you stay in your class or not. If you behave right, then maybe you're gonna take the star of the good student of the year. And if you don't, then you're gonna be punished and be taken home. And that's exactly what the new era of censorship is doing, and the new era of punishment that Meta is doing. And this is shameful because technically when you build this platform, it was a platform for connecting people, not classifying people. I only have the right to talk if I'm a Jew or someone who calls for supporting Jew or taking over a Palestinian land, or the ridiculous footage that I see with soldier bragging about destroying houses and stealing houses, bragging about the gender reveal of their new coming baby by detonating a house in Gaza, or bragging about the Hunger Games shooting of people on the ground, and that does not violate Meta rules. But when I put a piece of news about what's happening on the ground, that's a big violation, that my account will be closed because of it. So to make the whole story short, what's happening right now is disgusting, is utterly shameful. It's something that if anyone in Meta is hearing me, it's really a shame that a platform that became the voice of the voiceless people turning into the new ruler of the world, the one that silenced the people into a point that now we're only looking for other places than Meta to make our voice be free. Once upon a time, you were the freedom, and it's so shame and painful to see you losing this title, this great name that was given to you guys on behalf of the people, because this is what you are. You are the sound of the people. So honestly, if my account, and I've been on your platform since day one that you started in 2007, and this is how we managed to build the story. This is how we managed to overcome what others didn't want us to say. And after 25 plus years, you're losing this beautiful platform. It's really sad to see the death of such a beautiful platform. And I urge you deeply to start working on having an equal voice to all the people, because even my Jew friends are complaining about the restriction of their voice as people who survived the Holocaust and now are being silenced by Zionists who are using their religion as a cause to implement politics. And I want my Facebook and my Instagram to go back to life, because it doesn't make sense that I'm there. I have so many followers and you don't give me a voice. And let's talk a little bit, sorry, before I end. You're not just censoring our subject, you're not just censoring our flag, you're not just censoring the word of Shaheed or Palestine, you're censoring my faith. It get into a point where I had to wear sunglasses, so I will manipulate your censorship. I had to change my haircut to manipulate your censorship. And a friend of mine from the United States, Mo Hamza, every time he opens a new page, you just hunt him and close his page. How is this possible? How does this make sense? And how does this platform agree on killing herself and committing suicide like this?
Thank you. شكرا كتير فاتن.
عفواً.
Thank you very much. It was really actually, yeah, like that's what we really needed to hear, and the students needed to hear that like firsthand from Meta's victims, basically.
No, Lama, I just want to tell you about the joke, just to make it clear for if we have people in Meta and Nadim as well, you can deliver that message. I see stupid people, stupid, utterly stupid. I know, I understand that the new generation needs something fast and funny and quick. But then if I come and say the story quick and funny, and then I have a story of someone technically having the title of Iran bombing Israel, with she in the video celebrating with fireworks, and then her page is just growing. What exactly do you want from us? How exactly do you want us to deliver? How exactly do you want us to understand what is the thin line about your editorial and community standards and all this?
These kind of pages that you just mentioned for the Israelis, so it's Meta even went further. But thank you a lot, Faten. You're really amazing, and you're doing always a great job for Palestine and wherever you are. And we're here always to support you. Thank you very much. Please stay with us for the questions if you have more questions. And before now we jump into the last intervention before we take your questions and we have more interactive conversations. Nadim will tell us the battle with Meta and all the battle that Hamle has endured. Nadim leads the advocacy, leads Hamle, and there is a lot of wins, as much as it's a bit of frustrating subject, but there is a lot of wins and there is a lot of battles that Hamle have fought against Meta, and we managed to succeed. But Nadim, please take us through our struggle with Meta.
Thank you. Thank you, Lama. Thank you, everybody, for coming here. I'm happy to be with you today. First of all, I want to thank Professor Fabio for his amazing work in the last years and obviously the team, the amazing assistants, and also to our Hamle team and Ahmad Qadi and the other team members who have been also working and collecting tirelessly all of these cases. As you saw, we're speaking about like thousands of cases, a period of almost about 5 years of work. The battle and the struggle with Meta is over a decade, right? I mean, we at Hamle started this struggle and this fight in the years of 2014, 15, where these restrictions that Fatin and others were speaking about, even before Meta was created, when it was just called the Facebook, and the struggle was against that company. And it developed. And if we look across the years, each time that there was something, a crisis, Facebook and later on Meta took a very clear decision with which side to stand and which side to silence. And you saw it in the research and in the statistics, right? But we started all of these processes of struggle and trying to understand the policies of the company and trying to figure out why they are doing this. Since 2014 and 15, when there were like clashes in the old city of Jerusalem, and people were trying like to document what's happening and the violations. And obviously, as mentioned, for us Palestinians, this is not just going to the social media to upload picture. This is in many cases documenting human rights violations, documenting the violations that you as a person facing, and in many cases the camera and the live stream and the picture and the documentation is actually a protection in front of settler violence, in front of soldier violence. So it's a life-saving situations. It's something that it means a lot for the life of the people, and it's not just in terms of entertainment and going just to see nice things. So what I wanted to say that this is a whole more than a decade of struggle in front of the company, that each time that there is like a climax or some kind of confrontation, we saw the oppression, we saw the company making a clear position, taking one side with the Israeli side and attacking the Palestinian content. And I think what was explained previously in terms of how it went up, like for example, the issue of the threshold, like lowering the threshold after the 7th of October in a way that is coming to punish and in a way that is the Palestinian content and taking one side without any kind of context. In those years, I mean, obviously there were like achievements. I mean, Professor Fabio addressed the issue of the Shaheed policy, managing to change this policy because it was a blanket ban, and now it's more nuanced. There was the issue of attempt to put the whole issue of from the river to the sea as a slogan to ban it basically on Meta platforms. And there was a huge struggle around this, and Hamle and partners managed like to convince the oversight board of Meta to not to take that decision. But unfortunately, there are also other decisions, right? So the issue of the word Zionist as a kind of protected, if you are attacking the word Zionist, it means that as a kind of proxy to the Jews, and mixing everything together between political ideology, which is legitimate to criticize and not to agree with, within the religion, which should be protected on social media. So unfortunately, this has also happened. But one of the changes also during the years that Hamle and partners managed to get is also to have a Hebrew classifier that is well functioning to a certain extent. But also even that, I mean, before summer 23, even that was not existing. So meaning the Arabic language was over moderated for more than 10 years. And the Hebrew language was not at all. So you could write whatever you want, like rape, kill, etc., like the most horrible words that you can imagine. For years and years, there could be there as a kind of normal things. Nobody would pay any attention. Lately, because of the pressure, because of what happened, they did deploy a classifier, but even that classifier is not really fully functional, as Hamle tests have been proving in the previous years. And there's like a huge issue of under moderation and allowing genocidal rhetoric and allowing incitement happening. But I want to more specifically to address the recommendation of the research, because I think it's important to give it also some context to those recommendations. And the first one is about the human rights due diligence that Meta has, it needs to do it. It's part of their duties to do it. And this is not something that is happening. And this is something, one of the main requests through this research, basically, is to do this and to have it done in regular times, but obviously when we are speaking about crisis and wars and genocide that is happening. The issue of the DOI is like, it's an essential issue, because as the research show, basically the vast majorities of the takedowns and the restrictions, and it's also generally how Palestinians are seeing and how Palestinian being seen, Palestinian content is through this security lens, right? It's not saying that these people, they have the freedom of expression as the rest of the people around the world, and they have, the culture, the political opinion, etc. But as something suspicious, as something that we need to have a higher scrutiny to. And the result is basically that there is a huge takedowns. And even when we speak about the change of policy that Mark Zuckerberg declared in January 25, he said that this specific item will not be changed. So there will be, you can say bad things about immigrants in the US and about other groups, etc. All of that fine, but this specific one, and through it, Palestinian content is being seen is not going to change. And that's why basically it kept the levels of the aggressive moderation practices of Meta against Palestinian content is still there on the same level. The issue of the news worthiness is also something that is really important. It's really important in the sense, it's a situation of a war, of a genocide, of continuous crisis. So even if there are things that are close to DOI, they need to be allowed, because people need to know what's happening and what the different sides are saying, even if those people are, or those organizations are designated by Meta. Because knowing and not knowing, it's it's life and death in certain areas. So if certain organization or certain governments in our region in times of war saying this is there's gonna be a strike there's gonna be a certain event, or if you want to know in Gaza about certain hospital and you are having the Facebook page, for example, of the government in Gaza, and you need to know certain crucial information, health information, you need to see that. So if the social media platform will start even covering that without any kind of understanding of the nuances, this will be very problematic to the people. The issue of the journalist is also very important. The company cannot deal with the media and the journalists again the same way. There need to be much more sensitivity to those people and to those media outlets. And I think the examples that we were shown before, that clearly people are reporting, they are reporting certain declaration that the ordinary citizens need to know about them. And the constant attack against the Palestinian media by the platform is very problematic, especially that as we saw, there's no praise of any designated organization, there's no praise of violence. They are simply having the quote and letting the people understand or see the quote that certain political party and others, even if they are designated, they are saying that, and the people have the right to know what they are saying, regardless if they are agreeing, not agreeing. And all the time that is in a news context, this should be in the platforms, that should not be taken down. The issue of the Arabic language also, I mean, there have been lots of things that have been brought during the past years around the issue of, the different dialects and the meta classifiers, not understanding the dialects, especially the Shami and the Palestinian, and the whole improvement that Meta need to do there. I spoke about the issue of the Zionist. This policy need to be reviewed and reversed. It is very legitimate to criticize ideologies, political movements should be under scrutiny. Not only that, also governments and states should not be protected, and there should be clear distinguishment again between religion and ethnicity, nationality, and between political movements and ideologies and governments who should be criticized if we want to have any kind of conversation, any kind of democracy. I'll try to speed up. There need to be transparency from the platform, telling the people why their content is being restricted, or any kind of movement that the platform is doing. There is no this transparency. This was clearly explained in the research. Another point that is really important is obviously in times of crisis to have much more people, to have much more resources, and to deal with the situation, which often Meta does not do. There need to be transparency, and this is a very important point, how Meta is dealing with government's request. There's no transparency as such. We know about when they take a decision according to certain government, when a court decision is there, but the voluntary request or so-called voluntary request by government, there is no transparency about with that, and we don't know the numbers, and this should be clear for the public. And the last point is about the trusted partner channels. I mean, Meta need to decide if they are like really doing this trusted partner channel. They need to respect the partners and the civic society actors. They need to reply to them on time and to give them an answer. Not to say, yes, we are engaging with civic society and with the NGOs and with the human rights and digital rights organization, but in practice, they are not doing that. Just last word, I mean, as a civic society, we have the role to take this research. There's lots of material here, and this should be like a strong base, because it's data and data based research with lots of data, lots of evidence, very well documented, that can be the base of our advocacy or any kind of public pressure, legal pressure, etc., by the civic society and everybody who's interested in the future of freedom expression online. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadim. Thank you very much. Now it's time for questions and intervention, but we don't have that much of a time. So we have 20 minutes. We have online presence also. So we have some, so I'm going to take 2 questions from the online and maybe 2 questions here. And this is the first round, and we take another round. So
yes,
please.
So yeah, what was mentioned by
Yeah.
was mentioned
By Fatem, yeah.
Fatem was about Jewish people when they speak against Zionism, there's the same censorship, which is really like why the amalgamation is really ridiculous between Zionism and like Judaism, because it's from the very beginning, right, that Zionism, there's been a position from Jewish communities. And so I was wondering, has the research looked maybe at like follow the money, where the lobbies of Zionist organization, like the World Zionist Organization, could have some lobbying in Meta, and what could be the influence of those lobbies on the policies and on the decisions that you've collected? Because I think a lot of the decisions are not like neutral, even though they will argue they are, but more like because a lot of stakeholders are linked to those Zionist organizations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question. There is another one.
Be louder so that they can also.
So they can hear you, online can hear you too, yeah.
Trying to screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot for this research and all the work you put into this. Very important, I think, and very important to share this as much as possible. Yes, and I do agree. We have to keep our corporates to hold our corporations to account. In indeed following certain rules, but at the same time, it strikes me, and I need to be very angry to hear this, that we're such neoliberal movement to the end. We're to expect from such large corporations that they create a public space for us, of course, in itself is a horrible mistake. To have these expectations, we'll never, they will never follow our demands and our pleas, because these are corporate actors, and they don't listen to the larger public. They listen to the lobbyists, where the money comes from. So yes, it's important to hold them to account, publicize this, and be angry about it. At the same time, it's so important to realize that this is a fight we'll never win, in terms of expecting that corporations will create public spaces for debate. They won't. So there has to be alternatives to these big tech taking over our freedom to express ourselves. And I think, yeah, that's also a level that we have to look into and see what are the alternatives to using these platforms, because these are massively corporate, capitalist, awful platforms in and of themselves. So let's not romanticize or have too high expectations of them. That would be my.
Thank you. And let me have two questions from online, and I assume so. I think this is maybe for Faten. I'm not sure. What can we learn from Palestinian journalists and civil society about building alternative information infrastructure? Are these examples of successful strategies that rely less on Meta and more on newsletter, messaging apps, direct audiences, community network, independent websites, or other decentralized channels? What lessons could journalists in the global South apply in their own context? That's one question, I assume it's good for Faten. And another one, as more people turn to AI systems such as ChatGPT and AI-powered research instead of traditional news sources, are there any ongoing effort to study how these systems represent the genocide in Gaza and Palestinian perspectives? And there are more questions, but we take it in another round, maybe. So we start the answers. Do you like Faten to start, for instance? Faten? Faten, I think
Yes,
she stopped.
can you hear me now?
Yeah. Should I repeat the questions, or you have it?
No, I heard it.
Nice.
I was saying that sometimes I wish that I'm a multimillionaire, and the first thing I will do with my money is build a platform that is not applied to the lobbies around the world, because the world is turning to 5 businessmen that want to run the whole universe, and the rest of the world will be slaves to it. And there was a Palestinian platform called Upscroll, and they did manage to break it through, but then at the same time, you were shocked with the amount of people running away from Meta. So Meta people, like, honestly, do you want people to run away from you, or you want to correct your behavior and, give equal voices to everyone? Because Ahmed, the one in the glasses and the headphones, I don't know if you see him, I drove him crazy. Like, honestly, he became Ahmed we're driving him crazy. All Palestinian journalists, and not even just Palestinian journalists, all journalists around the world, Arab journalists that started to speak about Palestine. Okay, what do? We got our account. I became your muhammiya around the world, your lawyer around the world, your PR. Call Hamle. That's the only way that we can do it. And, we need people more like Hamle, because Hamle is becoming the police. We can run away from Meta. Yes, of course we can run away from Meta. But why the hell would we run away when we can stand in front of their faces and tell them, correct your behavior, give equal voices to everyone? So it's easy to run away. But as Hamle and as Ahmed, the fighter, I call him the fighter, no, I want to stay here. And you're going to give me my right equally to those stupid bullshit things that you give time and voice to, and amplify a soldier committing a genocide online and keeping his content going on and on and on spreading. And you don't even put down his page or censorship him. And you come and censorship someone who's giving you a live stream of something, reality, that you don't even need to double check or fact check, because it's happening on the ground. So equal rights, equal opportunities, and people are not stupid anymore. Meta, if you hear me again, people are not stupid. People are running away from your platform. Facebook is already dead, and Instagram became the savior, but now Instagram is becoming the grave that is burying all our voices, and you're creating a stupid generation. You want stupid generation, And it's not your right to turn our society into a bunch of grifters that wants to make money on the cause of the Palestinian. And this is where we find big accounts because they're stupid, they act silly. They put the news in a way that is cute for you, but not cute for humanity and their brain. Respect the people. Respect the people that believe in your platform, that gave the time and effort in your platform. And it's because of us you grow. If we turn around you guys because we don't like your attitude, there is going to come that day if you keep acting black and white with people.
Thanks, Fatin. Do anyone, Ahmad, do you like to comment on any of the questions?
Maybe quickly on the same issue. So there is the approach. Also, someone also commented. This is the approach which many organizations and many activists also adopt, which is moving to alternative technology, which is a great approach, and this is good. But I agree with Fatin that I mean we don't want only to talk with ourselves. So it's our right to be equally on these platforms because these platforms we are actually for them we are a business, so we are a market for these platforms and they use us our data. So it's our right to have the right to be safe, to have the freedom to talk and to share updates and to express opinions across all these platforms as any other individual in the world. This is on the one hand, but it will be like a personal choice to leave that platform. That's also totally okay, but that doesn't mean to leave the space for these forms of repression by pulling out of these big platforms. So that's also an approach, but it doesn't mean that we also like accept this type of suppression by only passively leaving those platforms. So these two paths go hand by hand, I believe.
Thank you, Ahmad.
Maybe I can add to this that I mean I agree with you that they will always be evil, right? These companies and you know the business model and the connections and to also to expect that there will be like a very thorough change in the American political and legal system soon. It would be naive, but on the other hand, we have responsibility at least to prevent some of the harms that they are doing, and not to leave them continue on that level. At least to push the boundaries as much as we can. What's happening lately in the last few years that there are more and more attempts, at least, to create more ethical possibilities. So Upscrolled was mentioned, and then there is Power AI, for example, as a generative AI a platform that also trying to have a different model to still function in a business model that would allow them to protect the privacy of the people, etc. And before that, there were like Mastodon and there were like Blue Skies, and despite maybe also some criticism towards them, but they were trying to give something alternative. And I think lots of people from around us are de-Googling, you know, as a movement now and trying to take Proton and to take other kind of more ethical approaches, which is really, really important. And this should be done. And us and people who's looking for these ethical options, we should push for that. But at the same time, there is, you know, the square of the village, right? Which is like where, because if there are hundreds, maybe millions or tens of millions in these platforms, there are like, you know, billions and other general platforms, and you cannot leave them at least until some, you know, platform have these critical masses. We are far away from there. So we need at least to try to push them back, to try to have as much as possible our voices being heard, to have to fight for people who are trying to, you know, to document the reality. So for example, for us, like putting back accounts like Bisan from Gaza, Mu'taz Azaidi and others, which we have been struggling to put back, and in many cases we managed. It's something that still is it's important because somebody who's on the ground in Gaza, you know, and having millions of followers who are understanding what's happening in Gaza through her, it's really important to have the struggle and the fight, and it's worth the time. We're not naive. We understand that these companies will not like a revolutionary way change themselves, but at least to have less harm from them as much as possible.
Doctor, if you want to have some comment?
Very briefly, in the question about the external takedown request, I think this is something that we saw in the report to a large extent, especially targeting journalists and influencers. So one of the, we don't know by whom, right? The question is who's doing this, who's targeting these accounts. So one of the requests we have in the report is that Meta provides disclosure and transparency regarding the external takedown request. But this is obviously something that is happening. And I want to go back to the question of alternatives. He was discussing the question of alternatives. I think this is something that has been puzzling me for many years, researching these issues in relation to Palestine. We see a lot today that the original techno-utopians, they are very much advocating for the right to disconnect, right? They're not even happy anymore with the alternative solutions. They're going all the way into disconnection. We also have to say that these are mostly white men. So I think when we think about Palestine, there is an element which is the colonial dimension, right? So as Hamles showed in many reports, Palestinians do not have an infrastructural autonomy, right? They do not have an internet infrastructure. Israel keeps Palestinians under obsolete technology. So there is also a question before disconnecting, you need to have the privilege of being connected. So I think before Palestinians can have that right, they cannot then embrace the question of disconnection before that. Right? So I think there is an element of thinking about these from a colonial perspective. But I'm generally skeptical about the idea that we can create alternative, stable alternatives outside of the control of big tech. And very briefly, the AI question, this is not part of the project, but there is many reports showing that actually even the IDF is using teams for actually influencing the responses of generative AI. So this is, of course, something that is happening.
Thank you, Doctor. So I'm going to take another round of questions, 2 from here and 2 from the audience. But first, Fatin, that's a message from the audience to you. Very powerful comments from Fatin. Do we have the permission to quote you? Please say yes if yes.
Of course, yes. This is why I speak. I'm a journalist. You can quote
Exactly.
me and put it everywhere.
Perfect then. You can quote Fatin. So do we have questions here in the room? Yes, we do. Just raise your voice as much as you can, like in a protest.
Curious about when you were talking about the fact that Hamlet contacted Meta to complain about the Shahid restriction and was successful in making Meta reconsider their change of policies, if I did not understand it fully. And I'm curious about how this happened and what bargaining tools were used to convince Meta of this, because like I think Meta does not answer a reason. So like I was wondering if it was Hamlet's authority and potential to like create a scandal about it, or if it was more like a threat to appeal to the UN or to some other international court. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question from the floor? Yes, please.
So in your work, what's has the factor of law ever factored in? Like, has any of the cases escalate into something to do with law, like whether law of a specific country or like maybe international? And like, if so, then how was it conducted and what are the results, or how did you approach it in general?
Okay, and I have another 2 questions from the from online. One of them is, does Hamlet partner with Tech for Palestine on entrepreneurs for Palestine to study the possible solution and alternative than current biased, restrictive, and punitive platforms like Meta? That's a question. The second one, does your research address the use of social media for surveillance and border control, specifically Israeli authorities passing visa and entry decisions on access to applicants' social media accounts? And does it cover the two-sided nature of censorship, not only the suppression of those who post content, but also the effect on audiences who are prevented from seeing that content at all? These are the last two questions, I would say, and two questions from here, so we can wrap it up all together. Do we want to start from you, Nadim?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we are good partners with for Palestine. We have been cooperating on several issues. So this is one. The other one about the legal aspect. So in the case of Palestine, there was no litigation in front of Meta yet. I know that many are considering and maybe preparing and looking at it, but also we need to take into consideration that in the US, there's no major possibilities to do that because of the legal system, while in Europe there is the DSA and Hamli and others have been...
The Digital Service Act.
The Digital Service Act of the European Union. And Hamli and others have been studying these possibilities and seeing how this can be used to impact the company. So it's an important avenue specifically because the companies are aligning themselves with extreme right-wing politics. They are less and less caring about human rights and other issues. And many of the organizations have been considering this path and looking at it. Historically, it's important to look back also that there are two important cases that are still rolling in courts. One is around the issue of Myanmar and the Rohingya and how Facebook acted there and facilitated the genocide. Similarly, around the Tigray genocide and Ethiopia and the whole crisis that happened there. So there is another case in Kenyan courts because the content moderation or the lack of content moderation actually was happening through Kenya. So the legal aspect against the company is very valid point, and lots of civic society, not only around Palestine, but generally globally are either already taking it or considering that. And about the Shaheed, so basically, as we all know, there is the Oversight Board of Meta, which is kind of the Supreme Court of Meta around content moderation policies. And from time to time, they present cases and then civic society scholars and others submit their opinion on that. One of the cases that we spoke about was Shaheed. So for many years, there was a huge criticism towards the company around the blanket ban against this word. We have to understand that this is not only about Palestine and the Arabs. The word Shaheed is relevant for almost 2 billion Muslims across the globe. And having a blanket ban without kind of any nuance and assuming that the word Shaheed necessarily is praising violence is obviously deeply Islamophobic and racist, and it means just lack of understanding basic culture. So I think the pressure mounted from lots of directions to the moment where this oversight board declared that they're gonna discuss it, and lots of bodies were submitting proposals and submissions, including Hamle partners, and we encourage lots of also scholars from all over to submit and to explain to the company why this is problematic. And finally, the decision was to have a nuanced content moderation policy towards that word specific.
Yeah. Doctor, maybe last words? And we're finishing up or wrapping up, so maybe last words from you, answering easy questions. And I want to apologize first for the people online for the questions, because apparently online, like, they have so many questions. They already submitted so many questions, so we don't have time to answer them. But I think it's good to reach out to Hamle and to Ahmad and Nadim, and we can continue the conversation, anyone listening to us, because they were important, actually, questions. So, Dr. Fabio.
If nobody wants to intervene from over.
Matt Fatten, do you want to have a very last word?
Very last word. Thank you for your time. And Hamle, thank you for all the work that you do. Ahmad, يعطيك العافية. You're such an amazing guy. Nadim, you are the protector of all, digital right. And I just want to add, like, in explaining like a simple thing like the word Shaheed, for you people in the room, you need to understand the word Shaheed, which is martyr. If you go to school and you get hit by a car and you died, you're a Shaheed. you're a martyr because you went for a cause. If you were swimming in the beach and you drowned, you're a shaheed, you're a martyr. So do the comparison between this word, how the Western world see it, and how like other religions see it, and then you will see the beauty in it and apply it on everything, because this is simply the only right for me as a Palestinian, for a Palestinian journalist who got shot 3 times, who was in jail 2 times, who went through hell, that was hunted by rockets, by tanks, by Israeli forces, sexually harassed by them. And I come and tell my story and I cannot hear a voice. And then I see a white person, with all due respect to everyone, but if I'm in the United States, I don't want me to go and talk about the United States while I'm in Palestine. If I have someone who's covering the Mexican fights that are going right now because of the walls that they put around the stadium, because they're separating the poor area from the area where the World Cup is going to take place, then definitely you will not listen to me. You will listen to the Mexican who's on the ground behind the barrier fighting to have his right? So it's nice to hear everyone talking about it, but you need to hear it from the source, from those people who are suffering on the ground. So look for them. You people also, people online, people in the room, you also have a work to do. You cannot just wait for the news to come to you. It's easy to see by a simple search, Palestinian journalist. We were educating you guys on how to get to the news, how to get to the source. I'm sick and tired of correcting news of a grifter who is totally white, only 18 years old, with all respect to the all 18 years old, because I love you, you're smart and amazing, but you go and put false news, and then I have another work to do, is correcting the mistake that you did, and the false news and the fake news, but then the fake news doesn't work. Khalas. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for everything.
Thank you, Lama, for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me chair. And now my work as an advocacy is gonna start for Meta. So I'm gonna start working on this big, amazing research to sue Meta, maybe. We never know. I don't want to
Yeah,
go at first.
I will
We
be
never
with
know.
you.
I mean, of course, you will be with us, by the way. We need you
Yes.
always, Faten. Ahmed, I don't know if you wanted to say last word or just we wrap up the session.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Faten, for your always strong voice, and thank you everyone for joining us. So I would use just in just some seconds to answer. We have many questions online. I mean, we won't have sure to have some time, but I mean, feel free. I can share also my email. I also shared Dr. Fabio's email also as well, based on request online. I mean, you can reach out to us for more details, any cases, also your experience. But I have just a random question because it's right about her. So someone's asking if any if like any one pro-Israel or Zionist or pro-Israel activists try to subvert or hijack like reporting mechanism on her. So at the beginning, we faced some issues. We received many of those phishing emails and cases, but I mean, back then we learned quickly, and we now have like technical layers. Like there are techniques. I'm not a technical person, so the technical team are doing it. But like for example, the CAPTCHA. So using the CAPTCHA and similar techniques, stop those bots emails or submissions long time ago. In addition to that, we also have this human review. So we no longer at all receiving those cases, but still we also validate humanly. But yeah, back then when we launched it, yeah, we still these phishing attempts are happening even through email and any other means. But I mean, technically, it's easy now to deal with those attacks. Thank you very
Ahmed.
much.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. So we're done, and that just last takeaway for you. Always screenshot everything you do on Meta before and after. That's good always for documentation. Before you post, just in case, screenshot it, document it. Always remember, and after. Always screenshot all your processes because we always need them for documentation, and spread the word. And please stay loud on Meta for Palestine. Thank you very much. And thank you. The three of you are actually the four of you. Me and you are not here. It's okay, you know. Thank you very much. Yeah.